Hello there, everyone. Today we're going to do this. This is a Danish special fly. It's a fly for sea trout, but this will work for trout in, I guess, anywhere. It's supposed to look like a small goby, but this has been tuned up a bit with some pink and some pearl. In Danish, it's called Polar Magnus. So that is the name of this, Polar Magnus, and the original pattern is a Magnus, and on the Magnus we have gray dubbing instead of the pearl, and then there is no pink front hackle. So the Magnus is a famous Danish fly, and then a guy by the name of Claus Eriksen decided to pimp that or tune that a bit for the winter fishing. So he tied this and dubbed it the Polar Magnus. So let's go! Woohoo! It's a great fly. Really, it's one of those flies that has been consistently producing and popping up all around the coast for many years. So basically, this is probably one of the most classic patterns for Danish sea trout around, and it has consistently been around for, I would say, more than 20 years probably. So this is one of those flies that just continues to produce, and everyone just continues to give love to. So basically I'm just going to add a small amount of tying thread to attach these bead chain eyes, like that, and then I make some cross turns around the eyes here. And bead chain eyes is kind of like beads on a chain, and then you just cut out two. They add some nice weight to the fly, but also they give this eye effect, and it looks pretty cool with the small black dot from where the chain went through these beads. So you just make a bunch of cross turns, then you take some sabagap in order to make this really stick there, and you apply some of this to the tying thread, just so you can see small droplets forming on the tying thread, like this, and then you just turn these cross turns. And once you've made a bundle of cross turns, then it's important to also make some turns that is all the way beneath the eyes, because when you do that and you pull, you will tighten and fasten very securely all the cross turns, like so. Okay, so there you have the eyes. They are on top of the hook, and some will argue that this fly will fish upside down now, and that is probably correct. Even though I think I fish this tied in a small loop on my leader, so it doesn't matter that much. It will very much jig and jive in the water because of the weight distribution here in the front. And what was that? Oh, and it's generally a very lively fly. And since it's symmetrical all the way around, it doesn't really matter which side is up, because it will look completely the same to the fish, no matter what side is up and what side is down. Then we're gonna use some grizzly marabou for the tail part of this fly, and we need maybe one, maybe two feathers, depending on how big the feathers are. And the way I use these is I fold down the fibers, and then I pluck out the center, because that will look kind of dull, like so, on the finished fly. And so I have a way better tail that is uniform, but not as uniform and as abrupt as it would have been without the as it would have been with the center. Like that. And then I'm gonna cut off the feather. Just gonna measure it so it's a bit behind the eyes, and then basically what I do is I tie this down. This will give me a bit more bulk for when I'm tying my dubbing. It will also give kind of like a very uniform thickness on the body now, and it will help me, so I will use less dubbing. The next thing we want to tie down is a rib. I'm just going to use 0.16. I don't know what that is in X, but it's thin. For rib to make this fly more strong and more durable, I'm hanging that off to the side, and then I'm gonna take a grizzly feather. And it's important that it's a rooster, but it's not that important if it's a whiting or a keok or whatever you have. But a grizzly rooster feather. This has to be, the length of these has to be around a bit longer than down to the hook point. And then you take this feather and you gently fold all the fibers backwards, like so. And then I tie this down in the tip, because then it will gradually taper up towards the eyes as we do that, like so. Just gonna add a bit more tying thread here to make sure the rib is fastened completely. So I turn it over and fold it back, and then tie on top of that again. That will secure the rib. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. It sounds funny when you say it in English. I think rib. Or it's just me that's going mad, I don't know. And then I'm gonna take some, whoa, crap. I just tipped over my super glue, but the lid was not attached, but none of it spilled, so it's all good. And then I'm gonna take some pearl flashy boot up or iced up, and basically I just apply that to the tying thread using pressure and the twist of fingers, like so. And we want this to taper, so it has to be thinner in the part nearest to the tail, and then gradually become more dense and more thick as we move up towards the eyes, like that. Take a little more dubbing. And do exactly the same as the first time. This will allow us to scratch out some dubbing later on, and to give it kind of like a halo effect. It's a fairly simple pattern, this one, but it's really is a killer fly. And as you can see, it now has the desired tapering effect. Then we turn the grizzly hackle here. Make sure the spacing is even. And ideally you would want 5 turns of the hackle. That's just a golden rule in fly tying. A body hackle, a palmar hackle has to be 5 turns. And since I tied this down on the side that was pointing towards me, that's also where I have to end. So it has 5 hackles all the way around. But since I want this to be a bit more fully hackled in the front, I'm gonna do 1 more turn of the hackle up behind the eyes, like that, cutting away the leftover feather. Fold everything back and secure the feather with some tying thread. And now it's time to turn the rib. And you can do you can do it like this, so you turn the rib opposite of the hackle. If you do that, you will get the strongest possible fly, but you will also catch some of the hackle feathers. So if you do it like that, it's very important that you remember to pull out those fibers, those hackle fibers, with your dubbing needle before you finish the fly. So remind me if I forget that. So like this, again, folding everything back. And now for the finishing touches, I'm going to take a soft hackle. So this, it could be from a rooster, but if it's from a rooster, it should be down here on the shoulder part of the rooster, not these feathers, but otherwise then use a hen. And that's because we do not want too many turns of this hackle. We only want a few, but we want them to stand out a bit more and to be more dense than the grizzly hackle. So again, I do it exactly the same way. I take the side that is pointing up on the cape, and then I tie it in at the tip, so the feather is pointing towards me, or that the side is facing upwards, the side that is also upwards on the cape. Cutting away the leftover, and then I turn this. Not many times, maybe 2, maybe 3 turns of this hackle is sufficient. Like that, just to give it a bit more bulk and give it a bit of a kick. I'll tie down my hackle. Cutting off the hackle. Like so, and then the fly is done. You need to do a whip finish, but sometimes it can be nice to give it kind of a bit more of a head. So take a bit more of the dubbing. Just a very slight amount, a very small amount. And what I do with this is I tie this in cross turns, so it covers the eyes here. Maybe a single turn behind the eyes, and then a small amount in front, like so. So you get kind of like a small head going up there. You see? I hope you do. Just have to refocus this like that. Then I do a whip finish and apply some sabagap to the head, and then this fly is finished. As I said, this is one of the best producing flies, and has been for many years for the Danish coast for sea trouts. So I'm pretty certain this will work well in Germany and Norway and all other places. And it's kind of one of those flies that actually I'm just gonna pull out all the hackle while I ran on here. It's one of those flies that really is in the same color scheme as a lot of other flies. So it's kind of like the same as the vaskebjørn, the raccoon, and it's also very similar to the Magnus and the gray Fred, which is another famous all-time favorite Danish trout fly, sea trout fly. But what this is, and why those types of patterns have proven to be so effective is, I think at least, is that they are looking like food. They're not looking like any specific food source, although if at the point of a gun, I would say that this is probably a small goby imitation, but or a stickleback or something like that. So it's not designed to look very much like a specific food source for the trout. It's basically meant to look very much like food, and that's it. It's meant to look like food, and the only way trouts can test out if something is edible or not is simply and luckily to just grab it with their jaws. And I think we are very fortunate that is the case, because a lot of the times I think that trout are basically doing a lot of trial and error. I've seen trouts eat branches. I've seen other fish like cod and stuff like that go for rocks that I threw in the harbor and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the times it's probably the same with our flies. They just want to see if it really is food, and the only way they can do that is actually by biting onto those. To that new thing that they haven't seen before, experienced before, and then you catch your fish. So here it is, the Polar Magnus, great fly that will be in my box from now on. I fished a bit with it in past years, but not that much. But now I've done this video, I have some, so definitely this is gonna get one more go, because the recommendations of this from very good fishermen is great. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and remember to swing by the web shop or subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you for tuning in.